I was born in Queens, New York. Soon after we moved to Dover, New Hampshire, which is the city that I grew up in. I'm the oldest of four. I was pretty young knowing that I wanted to be involved with music in some kind of fashion. It had already been living in our household anyway, from the beginning, from the gate. But shortly after we moved here, my parents divorced, and that kind of just shook things up, kind of made the whole world change. By middle school, I was already known for music. I had already started gaining friends and lots of people asking questions about what I was doing, wanting to learn. And I had already been collecting equipment at this point since I was like 5 or 6 years old. I was already collecting equipment and building my own studio. Back then, we didn't have, everything crammed into a computer like you see today. So I was really good at hooking things up, connecting all these pieces of equipment. I loved electronics. I love fixing things and connecting things and stuff like that. I would be in my mother's attic for hours and hours and hours, just creating music, recording music, playing it back, making sure, studying my craft pretty much. Play back stuff that, I had recorded or we had recorded, and, on repeat, you'd hear the same song 90 times. We'd all be at my mother's house and just chilling, having a good time with the music, blasting, nonstop. I'm DJing for my friends and parties, stuff like that, and even some small events. I started getting into trouble, and it just followed me to high school. I had started acting out, fighting and not getting along with certain people, not getting along with the teachers. I wasn't paying attention. I was bored pretty much. I ended up dropping out of high school, I believe in my sophomore year. Started drinking and stuff like that. Pretty much that's when I started having my first taste of getting in trouble with the law. I was leveling it up with the music, I had more people coming along, and it seemed like I had found this great thing that attracted people to me for some reason. But on the same note, I started getting locked up, and I was fighting and going to jail and not listening to, any of the people that I should have been listening to at the time. I thought I knew it all. I'm just chilling and partying and more music, chilling, party, more music, more partying, more chilling. Our music was still growing at the time, so we ended up doing our own events and shows and stuff like that. So we started growing a fan base. I decided to go and get my GED. Right after I got my GED, I ended up getting into some trouble. Even though I had done what I had done, I still ended up getting injustice. The outcome of the situation, in my opinion, it wasn't very fair. So after that, I was just mad at everything. I felt like the world was against me. I felt like everything was unfair. So that just kicked up my urge to drink more. I started drinking heavier. My alcohol consumption was rising along with my temper. I didn't even notice. I was becoming what they call the functioning alcoholic, but it also started to cause more problems at home. I wasn't listening, I was disrespectful. I was blasting music all the time. I had people in and out of my mother's house all the time. It just seemed like I didn't care about anything but music. I started pushing people away and losing trust in others and not believing in the system. I started losing good relationships, and I was also hurting people mentally and physically. At that time, I didn't see how much of an effect I had directly on my family. I remember one time a bunch of our family had gotten together. I'm from New York and Georgia, Virginia, and different areas. We all met at my mother's house. A lot of my family is religious. My grandmother is very religious. So we would pray, before we would eat and stuff like that. Once everybody was getting on the road to go home, we would, gather hands and pray. Well, this time we all joined hands. My grandmother was praying for everybody and then started praying on my behalf. She ended up breaking down, crying in the middle of this prayer in front of all of my family members, praying for God to take the taste of liquor out of my mouth, asking God to keep hands on me, praying for my mom. And they're all just kind of looking at me, giving me that look, like, this is you, you did this. That was a time pretty much where I was like, okay, maybe I was questioning myself. I was starting to question myself, I didn't realize that I was causing this much heartache to anyone. I had a daughter. She ended up passing away. She was a month and a half. The doctors couldn't tell us anything. I didn't understand them not knowing anything and basically just slapping a label of SIDS on it. I was definitely not in a good place at the time. I remember the police coming to the apartment and they were just being extra. We were going through a lot. Lost a child and they were acting like we did it. I was angry. I was so mad. Over the next 3 years, I continued drinking. I ended up getting locked up again, but this time was a little bit different. I ended up going through something that I haven't really, spoke about with many people. What I think was delirium tremens. And I remember after that, it was like, boom. I'm not doing this anymore. I definitely got to a point where I scared myself. I had been always thinking about the situation that had happened with my grandmother. So, while I was locked up, I took the time to kind of replan my life. From there, when I got out, I reached out to my friend Matt, basically asked him to be my sponsor. I had been to like 1 or 2 meetings or something like that, but I didn't do the STEP program. I was still running a business while I was doing all this drinking and stuff like that. So I still had studio sessions and I still had shows that we had to do. I chose to kind of just take a risk. And I started getting into really kind of trying to understand how the world works. And that's what kind of led me into real estate. But now I'm in love with real estate with the same passion that I had for music. I would never think that this was the way that I was supposed to be helping people, being of service to my community. Just kind of everything about it is interesting. It's something you could dig deep in. Once I became sober and I was seeing everything clear, I'm seeing the world through new lenses. It's definitely a blessing to be able to come from where I was headed to the life that I have now. Got a second chance.